If you have dead, compacted, lifeless dirt on your property, you've probably been fed the same lie that every American farmer has been fed for the last 70 years. You've been told that fixing sterile soil takes years of expensive cover cropping, truckloads of overpriced compost, or thousands of dollars in synthetic bottled amendments. That is a manufactured lie designed to keep you on a subscription plan to the fertilizer industry. There is a liquid that you can brew right now in your own kitchen using nothing but water, milk, and discarded trash-bound corn. It triggers a microbial explosion so aggressive that soil laboratories have measured its decomposition rate at 300% faster than conventional methods. No chemical inputs, no specialized equipment, just a few days of waiting. Dirt that was essentially concrete, so dead it couldn't even sprout a weed, is now producing record-breaking yields. And the commercial agriculture monopoly is terrified you're about to find out how to make it. If you believe in preserving the kind of agricultural truth that corporations actively try to bury, you know what to do. Today, we're exposing a piece of biological engineering that was intentionally suppressed because it threatened to collapse a multi-billion-dollar house of cards. And our story doesn't start in some sterile, million-dollar university lab. It starts in the American Midwest with the most heavily subsidized crop in existence and a massive pile of spoiled garbage. Just a few years ago, a quiet coalition of 19 conventional farmers in the heartland hit a breaking point. They were facing what agronomists call total soil collapse. Decades of pumping synthetic nitrogen and heavy chemical salts into their fields had burned up all the organic matter. Their land was physically addicted to the chemicals. The ground had turned into hardpan, a layer of soil so densely compacted that rainwater just pooled on the surface and evaporated. You couldn't drive a spade into this dirt without taking a sledgehammer to the handle. Facing bankruptcy from soaring fertilizer costs and plummeting yields, they were desperate. Foreclosure was knocking on the door. Then, a massive late-season storm caused a series of silo leaks across the county. Thousands of pounds of harvested feed corn got wet, spoiled, and started to ferment. It was entirely ruined for the market. It was headed straight for the landfill. But instead of throwing it away, one of the older farmers remembered a technique his grandfather used during the Dust Bowl, a method of turning waste grain into a biological inoculant. Having absolutely nothing to lose, these 19 farmers gathered up their ruined, trash-bound corn, and they started brewing. To understand what they did, you have to look back long before the invention of synthetic nitrogen. When the indigenous peoples of the Americas first domesticated corn, they didn't just create a food staple, they accidentally unlocked a biological engine. Early Native American agriculture is famous for the Three Sisters planting method, but what's rarely talked about is how they handled their processing waste. When raw corn is soaked in water, whether for cooking, nixtamalization, or just by accident, it ferments. Early American pioneers and homesteaders noticed this too. Whenever they dumped the leftover cloudy water from soaking corn, or the fermented slop from their livestock troughs out into the yard, the vegetation in those exact spots didn't just grow. It exploded. It grew thicker, darker, and shockingly resilient to drought. They didn't have microscopes. They didn't know the physics behind it. But the observation became a quiet rural rule of thumb. The water that breaks down the grain builds up the ground. The mechanics behind this phenomenon are almost insultingly simple, but they are incredibly violent on a microscopic level. Corn is absolutely packed with complex carbohydrates and sugars. When you submerge cracked, old, or spoiled corn in water, you create an all-you-can-eat buffet for indigenous bacteria floating in the air all around us. Specifically, you are breeding lactic acid bacteria, or LAB. This is the exact same microscopic workforce that turns milk into cheese and preserves sauerkraut. When these wild bacteria gorge on the cornstarch, their populations explode by the billions. And as a byproduct of eating that starch, they excrete lactic acid. When you apply this serum to dead soil, you are initiating a biological hostile takeover. The lactic acid instantly goes to work. It naturally and gently lowers the pH of the immediate environment. In the microbial world, this is chemical warfare. That acidic shift completely suppresses harmful, disease-causing pathogens, the kind of bad fungi that cause root rot, wilts, and blights. They cannot survive the lactic acid. But the beneficial microbes, the earthworms, the mycorrhizal fungi, they thrive in it. You are literally starving the bad guys and heavily arming the good guys. Even more incredibly, the lactic acid acts as a solvent. In dead soil, crucial nutrients like phosphorus and calcium are often locked up, bound together like microscopic rocks that plant roots simply cannot absorb. The lactic acid breaks those chemical bonds, dissolving the minerals and spoon-feeding them directly to the root system. This is exactly what happened on those 19 farms. They took their ruined corn, soaked it in massive IBC totes, extracted the biological serum, and sprayed it over their dead, hard-pan fields. The results didn't just surprise them, they defied modern agronomic models. Within 48 hours, microscopic life returned to the sterile dirt. By day 17, something miraculous happened. The hardpan began to fracture. The soil structure started to aggregate, crumbling like chocolate cake instead of concrete. Earthworms, which hadn't been seen on these fields in a decade, were suddenly boring deep into the earth, aerating the ground. By the time harvest rolled around, these 19 farms didn't just survive. They saw crop yields rivaling their neighbors who were still spending fortunes on chemicals. But their input costs? They had dropped to essentially zero. You don't need a 1,000-acre farm to do this. You can weaponize your own trash right now on your kitchen counter. The process is deceptively simple. Day 1. Take a handful of corn, cracked corn, cornmeal, or even the cheap expired stuff you were going to throw away. Put it in a glass mason jar. Don't use plastic. Fill it with water. And shake it vigorously. You want the water to turn a cloudy, milky white as the starches wash off. Strain the corn out. You don't need the solids anymore, just that starchy water. Leave that liquid in the jar, cover it loosely with a paper towel or a breathable cloth, and put it in a dark cabinet for about 5 to 7 days. During this waiting period, wild lactic acid bacteria from your specific local environment will dive into the jar and colonize it. After a week, it will develop a slightly sour, sweet sourdough smell. Now comes the separator, milk. Mix 1 part of your fermented corn water with 10 parts milk. The milk proteins act as a biological net. Over the next 3 to 5 days, the bacteria will consume the milk sugars and the solids will rise to the top, forming a thick, cheese-like curd. Underneath that curd will be a pale, yellowish, completely clear liquid. That clear middle layer is pure, unadulterated lactic acid bacteria serum. You siphon that off, and you have just manufactured a world-class soil inoculant for pennies. To use it, you just mix 1 tablespoon of that serum into a gallon of water and drench your soil. When you look at the economics of this, it becomes immediately obvious why this information isn't broadcast on every agricultural network. A few dollars worth of trash corn and a gallon of milk produces enough lab serum concentrate to treat an entire acre of land. Now contrast that with the commercial agriculture industry. The global fertilizer market is a $250 billion behemoth. The commercial soil amendment market, the guys selling you bottled microbes and compost teas, adds another $45 billion. Every single farmer, homesteader, or backyard gardener who makes their own lab serum in their kitchen represents zero recurring revenue for these corporations. A solution that costs $1 is an existential threat to an industry that relies on charging you $300 an acre every single year. So how does a multi-billion-dollar industry kill a $1 threat They bureaucratize it. Agricultural extension programs, which rely heavily on corporate research grants from chemical companies, aggressively promote synthetic, patentable solutions. They dismiss traditional fermentation methods as unscientific, anecdotal nonsense. The regulatory framework is completely rigged against you. To officially register and sell a microbial soil product, you have to navigate EPA regulations and testing that cost millions of dollars. You cannot patent corn water. You cannot monopolize wild, airborne bacteria. Because nobody can own it, nobody will fund the clinical trials required to legitimize it in the eyes of the government. Even the USDA organic certification system has been weaponized. If a commercial organic farmer wants to use microbes, the regulations often force them to buy certified, commercially produced biological inputs with a paper trail and a receipt. Kitchen-made serums are frequently excluded. Crop insurance companies have even been known to void coverage if a farmer deviates from the standard chemical input list. The message is completely transparent. Buy our plastic jugs or you are on your own. Despite massive industry pushback, the truth always surfaces when the results are this undeniable. Over the last few years, independent soil laboratories and progressive university agricultural programs have finally started running controlled trials on grain-fermented LAB serums. Their peer-reviewed findings confirm exactly what those 19 farmers and the pioneers before them already knew. They documented a 300% acceleration in organic matter breakdown. They confirmed pathogen suppression rates that actually exceed commercial chemical fungicides. This serum represents something much bigger than just a gardening hack. It is the literal difference between dependence and self-sufficiency. It's the difference between buying expensive solutions in a plastic jug from a big box store and growing your own solutions using the waste you are going to throw away. Every time you toss out old corn or pour starchy cooking water down the drain, you are throwing away the exact biological lifeblood that your soil is begging for. We have been conditioned to believe that the earth is weak, that it constantly needs synthetic chemicals just to survive. It doesn't. It just needs a jar, some water, a handful of waste grain, and the patience to let nature do what it has been doing perfectly for millions of years. What is the most stubborn, degraded patch of dirt on your property right now? Let me know in the comments below, and then go brew a batch of this and drench it. Watch what happens in 17 days. Make sure you hit subscribe and ring that bell, because we are exposing the truth about agricultural self-sufficiency every single week. Stay vigilant, trust the dirt, and start brewing.